At 71, I stopped being invisible, and they finally saw what happens when a mother stops being a bank. I never imagined I'd be standing in my own kitchen at 7, clutching the marble counter as if it were the only thing keeping me upright. Across from me, Vanessa smiled like a blade. "Oh, we got married last night," she said, slow and smug. "It was for VIPs only." For a heartbeat I thought I'd misheard. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but the curl of her lips left no doubt. She wanted me to hear every humiliating syllable. Daniel stood beside her, silent and awkward, eyes fixed on the floor. My hand shook, not from age, but from shock. VIPs only, and I, his mother, wasn't invited. 3 years of paying their rent, $1,800 a month. 36 checks added up to $64,800. I'd put $1,200 on my card for Vanessa's lavender sequin wedding dress, bought groceries, small presents, paid for Daniel's car repair when the engine died. It all came to nearly $77,500. And yet I learned about the most important day of his life after the fact. Vanessa's eyes glittered colder than diamonds. "It was family only," she repeated, savoring the exclusion. "The real family." I looked at Daniel, begging for him to stop it, to fix it. But he only tucked his hands into his pockets and looked down. My heart splintered. In that instant I knew what I had become. Not a mother, not a person with a voice, but a bottomless vending machine. 3 days later, the call came. Vanessa's voice was crisp and casual, like she was ordering delivery. "We're ready to move in. Did you send the keys to the villa yet?" The villa, my villa, the house Robert and I had built on the Florida coast, $5 million, glass doors that let the ocean in, the rose garden I tended, the dining room where I still set 2 plates though one had been empty for years. She repeated, impatient, "The keys to the villa. Ethan and I are ready to move in." I felt air leave me. The nerve. They'd humiliated me, then thought they could take my sanctuary. I answered quietly, steadier than I felt. "Oh," I said, "didn't I mention the condition?" There was a pause long enough for her to register shock. She hadn't expected resistance. For years, I'd written checks, answered their calls, swallowed my pride with just this once, "Mom," but this time was different. I hung up and sat at the dining table once, a place of laughter, now strewn with receipts and bills that read like proof of how much they'd taken. $64,800 rent, $7,200 groceries, $3,500 gifts, $2,000 car repair, total $77,500. A lifetime of love reduced to cold arithmetic. I whispered to the empty chair where Robert used to sit. I have been nothing but a vending machine. Something inside me shifted. I felt the machine crack. That night I locked every door and double-checked the bolts on my villa. I paced the halls as memories drifted past like soft ghosts. On the balcony the ocean glittered under the moon, and for the first time in years I didn't feel only tired or defeated. I felt something else. Control. Enough was enough. I would not hand over those keys without my condition being met. If you want to hear how I finally stood my ground and turned the tables after decades of being drained, stay with me. This is far from over. Asterisk. The morning after Vanessa's blunt call, I sat at the dining table with a yellow legal pad before me. For the first time in years I wasn't scribbling another check. I was adding up every dollar I had poured into Daniel's life since college, every small mercy that had quietly become their habit. The numbers stared back like a verdict. 36 months of rent at $1,800 came to $64,800. My hand trembled as I wrote it down, not from age but from the cold truth the ink revealed. I kept going. $7,200 for groceries, the bags of food I'd had delivered so they wouldn't stretch a paycheck, $3,500 for gifts, the flat screen, the anniversary dinners I never attended, $2,000 to fix Daniel's car when the transmission died, line after line. The total climbed until the sum felt like a tombstone, $77,500. Love converted into numbers, motherhood reduced to receipts. My chest ached with something heavier than sadness, a slow, rising rage that had been smoldering too long. Across the room the lavender dress I'd bought for Vanessa hung by the window, sequins catching the morning light like a silent mockery. She'd left it after a fitting, too indifferent to pick it up. The silver heels I'd imagined her walking down the aisle in sat unopened in a shoebox on the floor. I had bought dignity for her, and she had walked into her new life and slammed the door on me. The betrayal tasted metallic. Robert's voice, steady, wise, echoed in my memory. Love without respect is just charity. He was gone, but his truth lived in these rooms. My generosity hadn't saved them. It had fed their entitlement. A week before their VIP wedding, Daniel had called asking for $5,000 toward the celebration. I'd said yes again, even though I suspected it would vanish into something that didn't include me. That $5,000 would have been the last straw on top of the $77,500 already spent. They'd taken my money, erased me from their big day, then presumed the keys to my $5 million villa were theirs to claim. Humiliation burned brighter than grief. I stood, paced, and stared at my reflection in the glass cabinet. Older, yes, but harder featured, focused. For the first time in years I saw not just a widow or a mother, but a woman with choices. I picked up the phone and dialed Daniel. He answered on the third ring. "Mom," he said, guarded. "I want to be clear," I replied. "That villa is mine. It stays mine. If you and Vanessa think you can move in without my permission, you're wrong." He paused, then slid into a practiced, oily charm. "We just thought you'd want to help us. Mom, you always have. Isn't that what family does?" My eyes closed against the memory. Family doesn't exclude its mother from a wedding and then demand the keys to her home. "You've already had your help," I said, each word quiet and precise. $77,500. I am done." He hung up. The click of the line felt like a gavel. I drew a thick line beneath the total on the yellow pad. $77,500. The sum marked the cost of my silence, my patience, my years of letting them take no more. The villa seemed to breathe with me, the ocean breeze slipping through the curtains, as if the house itself agreed it was time to draw a line. I looked at the lavender dress, the unopened shoebox, the scattered receipts, relics of a woman who once believed giving would buy her belonging. That woman was gone. I whispered to the empty room, "If they want the keys, they'll have to meet my condition." And deep down I already knew what that condition would be. 3 days after that bitter conversation, tires crunched on the gravel outside the villa. I peered through the blinds and saw Daniel's car pull up. They thought I'd cave. But instead, I handed them a condition that shattered their illusion of control. Monica sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses perched high on her nose, lips already pinched with disapproval. They didn't knock, they marched up the walkway as if the villa already belonged to them. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. "What are you doing here?" My voice was flat. Daniel gave a weak smile. "We thought we'd get a head start, Mom. You know, move some things." Vanessa swept past him, brushing my shoulder as if I were a servant in my own home. Her gaze traveled across the chandeliers, the polished marble, the portraits on the walls. "Spacious," she murmured, "perfect for entertaining." My fists clenched. "This is my home." She turned, smirk curling like smoke. "Not for long. Keys, please." That single word, keys, cut through me like glass. I felt Robert's absence, the memory of his steady hand that always anchored me, but I also felt his voice, echoing from the past. "Don't cave." I straightened. "Only VIPs get help," I said sharply. "Remember that." Her smirk faltered for half a breath before hardening again. Daniel stepped forward, palms raised like a mediator. "Mom, let's not do this." "Vanessa didn't mean she meant every word," I snapped. "And now you both mean to walk into my villa like it's yours." Vanessa folded her arms. "Ethan is your son. This house is his inheritance anyway. Why delay the inevitable? Inheritance comes after death," I replied coldly. "And last I checked, I am still very much alive." Silence fell heavy. Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, maybe if you just let us settle in, things wouldn't be so tense." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Settle in? After $77,500 I already gave you, after you cut me out of your so-called family wedding? No. If you want to set foot in this villa, it will only be under one condition." Vanessa tilted her head, mocking curiosity. "And what condition is that?" I met her gaze. "You pay 6 months of your own rent upfront, out of your own pockets, and you both sign a legal no-claim agreement, stating you have zero rights to this property or to the Robert Sinclair Trust. Do that, and only then will I hand over a key." The air shifted instantly. Rage flickered in Vanessa's eyes, her face flushing scarlet. Daniel's shoulders stiffened, his hands curling into fists. "That's ridiculous," she spat. "You can't put conditions on your own family." "I just did," I said evenly. Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" My laugh was hollow. "Cruel Cruel is cutting your mother out of her son's wedding and then demanding the keys to her $5 million villa as if she were already dead. Cruel is draining every cent she has and calling it family love for the first time. Daniel's face shifted, shame flickering across it, but Vanessa only doubled down, her voice like venom. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll wish you'd been kinder. I stepped closer, my tone steady as stone. I'd rather be alone than be used. Remember that. For a moment, they froze. Then Vanessa spun on her heel, her stilettos clicking like gunfire on marble. Daniel lingered a second longer, lips parting as if he might apologize, but no words came. He followed her out. From the window, I watched their car pull away. Vanessa slammed the passenger door so hard the frame rattled. Daniel gripped the wheel like a man holding back everything he couldn't say. They didn't look back. I leaned against the closed door, my breath shaky but proud. For the first time in decades, I hadn't reached for my checkbook. I hadn't opened the door wide and let them walk all over me. I had drawn a line in the sand. The machine is broken, I whispered into the empty hall. But even in that moment of victory, a shadow loomed. Vanessa wasn't the kind of woman who accepted defeat. She would strike back, and I had to be ready. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a navy cardigan and pressed slacks, the kind Robert always said made me look strong and composed. Sometimes, strength comes from how you button your collar. I drove to the bank where I'd been a customer for over 30 years. The air inside smelled of polished wood and paper. I walked straight into the office of Mr. Lutz, the branch manager, a tall, calm man in his 50s with eyes that carried both intelligence and kindness. He had known Robert and me since the day we opened our first joint account. Vivian, he said warmly, rising as I entered. What brings you in today? I smoothed the hem of my cardigan and met his gaze. I need to make changes. Serious changes. Cancel every automatic transfer I've set up for my son Daniel and his wife. From today on, not a single cent goes their way. Mr. Lutz's brows rose, but he didn't interrupt. He folded his hands on the desk, giving me space to speak. For 3 years, I've paid their rent directly, I said, my voice trembling but steadying with each word. I've covered groceries, emergencies, even luxuries. In total, it's been $77,500, and yesterday, they came into my home, as if it already belonged to them. They demanded the keys to my villa, as though I were nothing but a placeholder waiting to die. His eyes darkened with concern. Vivian, that sounds like elder financial abuse. I have to say it plainly. I swallowed hard, shame prickling my skin, but I nodded. I know. That's why I'm here. The machine is broken, Mr. Lutz. I'm not handing out another dollar. He leaned back, lips pressed together. I'll help you cut every automatic payment, but be warned, when children grow accustomed to this kind of support, they rarely let go quietly. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I don't expect quiet. I expect a fight, but I need to take the first step. Together, we combed through my accounts. 36 rent payments at $1,800 each. Neat rows of transactions, each one bleeding money into Daniel's life. The table of numbers looked like a battlefield. With every signature I scrawled on the cancellation forms, I felt my spine straighten. By the last one, my hand shook from exhaustion and relief. Mr. Lutz's eyes softened with respect I hadn't felt for my own son in years. Vivian, he said quietly, this is the first time you've come here for yourself. Not for Daniel, not for Vanessa. Just you. Tears stung my eyes. It feels like I'm finally awake. When I stepped outside, the Florida sun blazed, the salt air heavy and alive. For the first time in years, I drew in a full breath without guilt pressing against my chest. But that evening, as I set a single plate on the dining table, headlights swept across my driveway. My chest tightened. Then came the knock, loud, demanding. I opened the door to see Daniel standing there with a man in a crisp suit. Vanessa lingered behind, arms crossed, her smile razor sharp. Mom, Daniel began, voice syrupy with false gentleness. This is Mr. Carroll. He's here to help straighten things out. Mr. Carroll extended a manicured hand. Mrs. Sinclair, I represent your son and daughter-in-law. They've asked me to review some of your financial documents to ensure everything is in order. It's a simple matter. If you'll let us in, we can get started. The audacity nearly stole my breath. I heard the threat beneath his polished tone. They were trying to corner me, to paint me as incapable of managing my own estate. I didn't take his hand. My documents are private. You have no right to them. His patronizing smile cut deep. Sometimes, Mrs. Sinclair families don't realize when it's time to step aside. This villa, these accounts, they're complicated. We just want to protect you. My blood boiled. Protect me. From what? From living in the house my husband and I built with our own hands. From buying my own groceries. No, thank you. Daniel's expression hardened. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. I already made it harder, Daniel. I went to the bank today. The money flow is over. The bottomless vending machine is shut down. For the first time, Daniel's mask cracked. His jaw clenched. His nostrils flared. Vanessa's eyes narrowed to venomous slits, her fury trembling on the edge of an explosion. You'll regret this, she hissed. Maybe, I said softly, but I'd regret it more if I handed you my life on a silver platter. They stood in silence, seething, before Mr. Carroll cleared his throat. We'll be in touch, Mrs. Sinclair. They turned and left. Their shadows stretched long in the night. I shut the door, bolted it, and rested my forehead against the wood. My heart raced, but my resolve burned hotter. They had made their move. I had made mine. The villa was too quiet that night. The hum of the refrigerator, my only companion. My hands rested in my lap, lined with years of sacrifice. For decades, I believed being a good mother meant giving until nothing was left. But now, for the first time, I wondered, had I given Daniel too much? I closed my eyes, and there he was, a boy again, standing in the backyard with a scraped knee. It hurts, Mama, he had cried, little hands clutching me. I kissed the bruise, wiped his tears, and promised I would always be there. But somewhere along the way, always being there became always paying. Every scraped knee turned into another unpaid bill. Every tear, another check. I walked to the hallway lined with family photos. Daniel at 6, holding a fishing pole, while Robert grinned proudly beside him. Daniel at 16, beaming in his football uniform. Daniel at 21, graduating college, tassel swinging, as he shook Robert's hand. That young man had so much promise. And now, he stood at my door with a lawyer, ready to strip me of everything. Was it me? Had I made it too easy for him to never stand on his own? The questions pressed heavily against my chest. I poured a glass of water and carried it to the dining table, now buried beneath receipts and cancelled transfers. Once, this table had echoed with Harold's jokes, Adam's teenage complaints, and the smell of my Sunday roasts. Now, it was only numbers, a battlefield of transactions. I traced a trembling finger across the slips of paper and whispered into the silence. So this is what my love has become. The ache inside me wasn't just for Harold, it was for Adam too. The boy I had raised had been replaced by a man who looked at me as nothing more than an ATM, and Marissa, with her smirks and sharp tongue, had only fueled the transformation. I needed air. Slipping on my cardigan, I stepped outside. The Florida night was warm, the breeze carrying the scent of jasmine and salt. I walked slowly along the stone path Harold had laid with his own hands, crooked but strong, like him. At the gate, I looked up at the stars and let my voice tremble. Harold, I don't know if you can hear me. They want everything we built. They want to call me useless, incompetent. I'm scared, but I'm angry too. Tears stung my eyes, but I wiped them away. I can't keep being the machine. I need to find another way. By the time I returned inside, something in me had hardened. From the hallway drawer, I pulled out a set of new locks I had bought months earlier but never installed. That night, with shaking hands and a hammer gripped tight, I replaced every lock. I called a security company and scheduled cameras. For too long, my doors, both real and metaphorical, had stood wide open for Adam and Marissa, but no more. As I turned the last screw, I whispered, I may be 71, but I am not powerless. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the villa in golden streams. I brewed coffee and carried it to the balcony, the ocean stretching wide and free before me. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a life that wasn't chained to Adam's demands, a life where mornings belonged only to me. Still, part of me ached. He was my son, and no matter what, a part of me longed for the boy who once looked at me with love in his eyes, but longing was not enough to keep bleeding myself dry. As I sipped my coffee, I whispered to Harold again. They think I'm weak, but I'm stronger than they'll ever know. That same week, I joined the garden club at the community center down the road. I hadn't gone since Harold passed, but I craved company voices, laughter, proof that my world was bigger than Adam and Marissa. The clubhouse smelled of soil and coffee. Pots of camellias lined the windows, and women chatted as they swapped seeds. I hovered near the door, clutching my handbag, ready to turn back. But a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind, sharp eyes approached me. "You must be new," she said warmly. I smiled faintly. "Not new, just returning." She extended her hand. "Eleanor Harris. I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. "Vivian Clarke," I replied softly. Down by the coast, recognition flickered in her eyes. "The villa with the roses. I've admired it for years." Harold was always out front, trimming hedges. My throat tightened, but I nodded. Yes, he was proud of that garden. Eleanor tilted her head, studying me. "You seem like you're carrying something heavy." I almost laughed. "Something heavy. Try carrying a son who drained $77,500 and still looked at me like I had done nothing." But instead of laughter, words spilled out, maybe because her voice was safe, maybe because I was tired of holding it all inside. "They shut me out," I confessed. "My son and his wife, they married without me, said it was family only. Now they want the keys to my villa." Her eyes sharpened with understanding, not judgment. She pulled out a chair. "Sit. You're not alone. My daughter once tried the same thing. When I cut her off, she called me heartless. 6 months later, she learned to stand on her own. It hurt, but it saved us both." Her words settled over me like sunlight. 6 months, I asked. She nodded. 6 months of saying no. 6 months of watching her stumble. But then she rose. If I'd kept feeding her, she never would have found her legs. Tears stung my eyes. "Adam doesn't even see me as his mother anymore. Just a bank account." Eleanor reached across the table, her fingers warm around mine. "Then close the bank. He'll hate you for it, at least for a while. But hate is better than dependence. Dependence will kill you both." The world around us faded, the chatter, the clinking pots, the smell of soil all blurred as her words sank deep. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. Other mothers had stood here before me, and they had survived. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders loosened. I took a long breath, inhaling the earthy scent of camellia. "I thought I was alone." "You're not," Eleanor said firmly. "Look around. Every woman here has a story of giving too much. The garden club isn't just about plants. It's about planting boundaries." The phrase made me smile. Planting boundaries, like roses. Boundaries had thorns for a reason. When the meeting ended, Eleanor walked me to the lot. The afternoon sky glowed pink, the air alive with cicadas. She touched my arm gently. "Vivian, whatever they throw at you next, remember, this you don't owe them the keys. Not to the villa, not to your bank account, not to your peace." Her words echoed long after I drove home. That night, I stood among the roses Harold and I had tended. I brushed a bloom, soft petals guarded by thorns, and realized Di was the same, still capable of love, still capable of beauty, but no longer defenseless. Later, I sat at the table of numbers again, but this time, the receipts didn't crush me. I thought of Eleanor's steady voice. 6 months, that was the seed she had planted in me. If she had survived cutting her daughter off, maybe I could survive cutting Adam loose. Maybe survival wasn't even the right word. Maybe I could grow. The villa no longer felt like a fortress of fear. For the first time, it felt like home again. 2 days later, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a phone number Eleanor had written neatly on a slip of paper. Call him. Eleanor had said, "He knows how to protect people like us." I hesitated. The old part of me whispered to keep the peace. Maybe Adam and Marissa would cool off if I stayed quiet. But Marissa's demand for the keys played on repeat in my head, and Adam's silence, and my own words. "The machine is broken." I dialed. The line rang twice before a calm, measured voice answered. "This is Donovan Weber." My words tumbled out. "My name is Vivian Clarke. My son and his wife are trying to take control of my villa. They've been draining me for years, and now they want the keys to my $5 million home. They're even bringing lawyers into my house and demanding documents. I don't know what to do." There was a silence on the other end, but it wasn't the cold, judgmental kind. It was the steady quiet of someone listening closely. Finally he said, "Mrs. Clarke, what you're describing is elder financial abuse. It's more common than people think, and it's against the law. If you're ready, I can help you fight back." The words "fight back" tightened something in my chest. "Do I have the strength?" I asked. "You have more strength than you realize," he answered. "What you need is a strategy. You've been too generous, and now they confuse generosity with weakness. We'll prove it's exploitation." That night Mr. Weber came to the villa. He was in his late 40s, flecks of gray at his temples, eyes that balanced intelligence with compassion. He sat at my table of numbers, scanning receipts and bank statements I'd spread out. $77,500, he murmured, tapping the underlined total rent, groceries, gifts, car repairs. This isn't support, he said. It's exploitation. Hearing it named out loud sent a chill through me. So what do we do? I asked. He folded his hands and outlined a plan. First, document everything. Every check, every transfer, every bill. Second, make sure you've cut all automatic payments. I told him I already had. Good. Next, secure the villa locks, cameras, and create written records proving the property is solely yours, so any claim otherwise is invalid. Finally, prepare for escalation. They've already brought a lawyer. Next, they may file for guardianship, alleging you're not competent to manage your affairs. The word guardianship hit me like a physical blow. Incompetent, they would say it, he warned. It's an old play. We'll counter it, he added. I'll arrange for an evaluation by Dr. Moore, one of the most respected psychiatrists in the state. His report will show you're fully capable. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope lit inside me. A man who knew the system was on my side. As he gathered my papers into a neat folder, he looked me straight in the eye. Vivian, you've been on defense for too long. It's time to go on the offense. If they want the keys, we'll make them meet your condition, and we'll show the court you're sharper and stronger than they ever imagined. After he left, I walked the villa with new confidence. I paused by the master bedroom, where Harold's photograph still stood on the dresser, his steady smile a small comfort. I'm not alone anymore, I whispered. Someone's fighting with me now. The next morning, the security team arrived. I watched them place cameras over the doors, the gate, the garage. When they finished, I stood in the driveway and looked at the villa, anew, not a liability to be taken, but a fortress to be defended. That evening, Eleanor came by with a basket of lemons from her yard. She noticed the cameras and smiled knowingly. I see Donovan's bin, she said. When I nodded, she added, they'll try to call you incompetent. Let them try. You'll prove them wrong. And when you do, you'll never doubt yourself again. Her words sank in as I breathed in the sharp lemon scent. They would strike harder, she warned, but this time I wasn't facing them as an open machine to be drained. I was facing them with boundaries, allies, and fire. That night on the balcony, the ocean breeze felt like an ally. If they want a war, I told the waves, they've got one. The storm arrived faster than Mr. Weber expected. One morning, a courier left a thick envelope at my door. Inside was a letter from a law firm I didn't know, signed by Mr. Carroll. They accused me of being unable to manage my finances and announced that Adam and Marissa were petitioning the court for guardianship, ostensibly for my safety. I sat at the kitchen table holding the page that threatened to strip me of everything, my bank accounts, my property, my right to decide. Guardianship meant losing control of my life. My hands trembled, but Donovan's voice and Eleanor's calm steadiness circled in my mind. I had taken steps, locks, cameras, documents, witnesses. I was not the helpless old woman they wanted to paint. I folded the letter and placed it beside the receipts on my table. I would not let them rewrite my story for me. It meant they wanted to reduce me to a child in the eyes of the law. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like thunder in my ears. That afternoon, Adam and Marissa arrived again, smugness dripping from every step they took. Adam avoided my eyes, but Marissa met my gaze with a syrupy, mocking sweetness. It's for your own good, Vivian. You've been slipping. Slipping, I snapped, my voice sharper than I expected. The only thing slipping here is your grip on my wallet. Her smile widened like a blade. We'll let the court decide. Their scheme unfolded quickly. Mr. Carroll, their lawyer, paraded so-called witnesses. First was Mr. Davis, the bitter neighbor who had always hated my rose garden because it blocked part of his view. He told anyone who'd listen that I was paranoid, twisting a heated driveway argument with Adam into evidence of instability. He even suggested that strangers coming and going from my villa were manipulating me. Next was Mr. Green, the pharmacist down the street who had once filled Harold's prescriptions and later mine. Somehow, Marissa convinced him to sign a statement claiming I'd been confused about my medications. The truth, I had asked him to double-check a dosage after my doctor switched brands, a simple precaution twisted into incompetence. Finally, came their trump card, Dr. Lehman, a psychiatrist I'd never even met. According to Marissa, He was concerned about memory loss and poor judgment. Concerned, without speaking to me once, a doctor for hire, ready to write whatever fiction their money required. When Donovan read through their stack of accusations, his jaw tightened. "This is a full-scale assault," he said. "They're stacking witnesses, weaving a narrative to make you look fragile and incapable. And what if the judge believes them?" I whispered. "Then we showed the judge the truth," he replied firmly. "They're telling a story, Vivian, but stories collapse against facts. And we have facts, receipts, statements, cancelled transfers, and Dr. Moore's evaluation once it's done. Don't let their noise shake you. Still, fear not at me. It wasn't just Adam and Marissa anymore. It was neighbors, professionals, doctors, as if the world was tilting against me. Then, one Thursday morning, came the knock that changed everything. A woman in a gray suit with a badge stepped inside, clipboard in hand. "I'm Miss Schultz, a social worker assigned to investigate claims of elder neglect and incapacity," she said. Her sharp eyes scanned my living room, the bills on the table, the photos on the wall, the lavender dress hanging in the closet. My knees nearly gave way. This wasn't just family betrayal anymore. This was the state, inside my home, measuring my freedom. I forced my trembling hands to pour tea. "You'll find I'm perfectly capable, Miss Schultz. The only danger in this house is how much money I've been giving away." Her brows furrowed. "That's exactly what we need to clarify." By the time she left, promising to follow up, my chest felt tight with dread. This had escalated beyond family squabbles. Now it was a battle fought with paperwork, witnesses, and government oversight. That night, clutching Harold's photo as the waves crashed below my balcony, I whispered into the dark, "They want to call me incompetent. But I see more clearly now than I ever have." I knew harder days were coming, but I also knew this: I wasn't backing down. 2 days later, my villa became the stage for a confrontation I will never forget. I had just brewed my morning coffee when the knock came firm. Official. Miss Schultz stood there again, clipboard in hand, her expression grave. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her hovered Adam and Marissa, flanked by Mr. Carroll in his immaculate suit. Their smiles were tight. Rehearsed actors waiting for the curtain to rise. "Mrs. Clarke," Miss Schultz began, "I need to follow up on my earlier visit. There are concerns we need to address." Concerns, the word almost made me laugh. The only concerns were the vultures behind her, already picturing themselves sipping wine on my balcony. I stepped aside politely. My home was tidy, bills neatly stacked, pantry full. I was 71, yes, but not helpless, not broken. They filed into my living room as if they owned it. Marissa's eyes immediately landed on the family portraits, lingering on the wedding photo of Harold and me. "Such a beautiful villa," she cooed, "but it's too much for Vivian to handle alone. She forgets things, misplaces important papers. We just want to help." My jaw clenched. I turned to Miss Schultz. "If I may, I'd like to introduce someone." Right on cue, the front door opened again. Donovan Weber stepped in, briefcase in hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Good morning, I'm legal counsel for Mrs. Clarke." The shift in the room was instant. Marissa's smirk faltered. Adam looked at his shoes. Even Carol's polished smile cracked for a split second. Donovan shook Miss Schultz's hand firmly. The atmosphere had changed. I was no longer standing alone. "I understand you're investigating claims of incapacity," Donovan began, his voice calm yet commanding. He opened his briefcase and spread out neatly tabbed bank records across the table. "Over the past 3 years, Mrs. Clarke has provided exactly $77,500 in rent, groceries, gifts, and car repairs for her son and daughter-in-law. These aren't signs of confusion. They're signs of generosity. Generosity that was abused." Miss Schultz scanned the papers, her brows knitting together. Donovan pressed on. "If she were incompetent, would she have detailed records of every expense? Would she have gone to the bank to cancel automatic transfers, changed the locks on her home, installed security cameras? This is not a woman losing capacity. This is a woman who finally found the courage to say no." I straightened in my chair, his words like a shield around me, but Marissa wasn't ready to surrender. She waved toward Mr. Davis, who slipped in uninvited, clearing his throat nervously. "I've seen concerning things," he said. "She argues with Adam in the driveway. Strangers visit at odd hours. I think she's being manipulated." Donovan didn't even blink. "And do you have proof? Photographs, videos, anything besides your resentment over her rose garden?" Mr. Davis stammered, face reddening. "Well, no, That everyone talks, gossip, Donovan cut him off, is not evidence. Marissa's lips tightened as she thrust forward another document, a statement from Mr. Green, the pharmacist. See, even her pharmacist noticed confusion with her medications. Donovan skimmed it quickly before returning it. Mrs. Clarke asked for clarification after a brand change. That's not confusion, that's caution. It proves she's careful with her health. For the first time, I saw Miss Schultz's lips twitch upward, the faintest trace of agreement. Mr. Carroll stepped forward, voice smooth but strained. We believe Mrs. Clarke is vulnerable and in need of guardianship. My clients only wish to ensure her safety and the proper management of her estate. Donovan's gaze sharpened. No, Mr. Carroll. What your clients want is control of a $5 million villa. They drained her for years, and when the money stopped, they turned to legal manipulation. That's not protection, that's exploitation. The room went still. Marissa flushed crimson. Adam's shoulders slumped as though the truth itself weighed him down. Miss Schultz closed her folder. I'll be filing my report, she said evenly. And from what I've seen, Mrs. Clarke is fully capable of managing her own affairs. Relief washed over me so strongly I almost cried. They had come armed with accusations, smug witnesses, and hollow certainty. But Donovan had turned it all to smoke. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in Marissa's eyes when they left, their footsteps echoing down the path. I collapsed into my chair, trembling. Donovan rested a steady hand on my shoulder. They'll take this to court. Vivian, be ready. But remember, you're not fighting alone anymore. I nodded, my voice breaking into a whisper. Let them bring the court. I'll be ready. That night, when silence fell over the villa, the strength I had shown drained from me. I sat on the edge of my bed, Harold's photo, watching from the dresser. My eyes drifted to a picture of Adam as a child, his hands sticky with sand, his smile bright and innocent. Where had that boy gone? How had he become the man, now dragging me into court, standing beside a wife who accused me of unfitness to live my own life? Tears slipped down my cheeks, soaking my nightgown. I had fought at the bank, in my home, even before the social worker. But alone in the dark, I felt small, old, forgotten. My villa once full of warmth and laughter, now echoed like a cavern. The phone rang past midnight. My hand shook as I answered, expecting another demand. But it was Eleanor. I couldn't sleep, she confessed softly. I kept thinking about you. They're going to drag me into court, I whispered, my voice cracking. My own son. How do you survive that kind of betrayal? You cry, she said gently. You scream. Then you stand back up. Because the one thing they want most is your surrender. Don't give it to them. When the line went silent, I clutched the receiver to my chest. Her words were like a candle flickering in the darkness, faint but steady. The next morning, women from the garden club arrived with flowers and casseroles, their chatter filling my kitchen with warmth. You're not alone, one of them told me firmly. We'll stand with you in court if it comes to that. Their kindness soothed me, but the hollow ache inside didn't fade. Later, I drove to the cemetery where Harold rested. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes as I walked between the stones, each step heavy with the weight of love, betrayal, and the fight still ahead. When I reached his grave, I sank to my knees, the damp earth soaking into my skirt. Oh, Richard, I whispered, tracing his name carved into the cold granite. They want to strip me of my dignity. They want to call me unfit just, so they can seize the home you built with your hands, the home where we raised Daniel. Can you believe it? Our own son. The sobs came, raw and unrelenting. I don't know if I can do this without you. You were the strong one. I was the peacekeeper, the giver. And now, they use that against me. The cemetery was hushed, except for the low rustle of wind through the trees. A bird sang from a nearby branch, its song fragile yet steady. I closed my eyes, clinging to the sound as if it could hold me together. I wanted love to be enough, I murmured bitterly, but love made me into their bottomless machine. And the moment I stopped, they brand me cruel. For a long time, I knelt there, crushed beneath the loneliness, but somewhere inside the despair, a spark flickered. I pressed my palm against Richard's name, whispering, they want me powerless, but I can hear you. You'd never let me surrender. You'd tell me to stand. When I rose to leave, my spine was straighter, my tears still damp but no longer weakening me. The night had nearly devoured me whole, but I clawed my way back to the surface. I wasn't finished yet. The next evening, twilight painted the sky in orange and violet. the kind Richard had always loved. I carried a single white rose, its petals trembling in the breeze. Kneeling again before his stone, the words beloved husband and father pierced me deeper than ever. Would Daniel even remember what father once meant? I set the rose down gently, but inside me, anger burned alongside grief. Richard, I tried. I gave Daniel everything. I thought if I just kept giving, he'd see me. But all he sees is money leaving my hands. My voice cracked, but I pushed through. They call me incompetent. They want the keys to our $5 million home. They think a signature will erase me. But do you know what hurts most? Not Emma's cruelty, not Martin's lies. It's Daniel's silence. He doesn't defend me. He doesn't fight for me. He just stands there watching, while they carve me up like I'm already dead. I pressed my hand flat against the cold granite, but I won't let them. Do you hear me, Richard? The machine is broken. I am broken but free. The words burst from me, carried by the wind. My tears dried, leaving only resolve. For the first time, I wasn't mourning. I was swearing an oath. I will not let them take what's ours. I will not let them reduce me to a ledger. I will stand in that courtroom and remind them who I am. I am Margaret Hale. I am not a bank account. I am not a burden. I am a woman who built her life with her own hands, and I am not finished yet. The breeze lifted my hair, and for a moment, I felt Richard behind me steady, reassuring. I rose, brushed the dirt from my knees, and looked at the rose resting at his grave. This isn't goodbye, it's a promise. When I win, I'll return and tell you myself. That night, as stars blinked awake above the villa, I found Mr. Turner waiting with a folder tucked beneath his arm. His expression softened. You went to see him, he said quietly. I nodded. I made a vow. I'll fight them until the end. He placed the folder on the table. Then, you'll need this. Dr. Coleman has agreed to evaluate you. He's respected, thorough, and not afraid to stand against people like Dr. Lehman. His report could change everything. I ran my hand over the folder, feeling its weight. Then let's do it. I want them to see I'm stronger than they ever imagined. Turner smiled faintly. That's the fire I was waiting for. That night, as I checked the villa's locks and glanced at the glowing red dots of the security cameras, I felt the fear still there, but reshaped into something sharper. Determination. I climbed into bed with Harold's photo on the nightstand and whispered into the dark, tomorrow the fight begins in earnest, and I am ready. 2 mornings later, I sat in Dr. Moore's office, a modest room lined with medical books and framed certificates. My palms were damp around my handbag while he finished jotting notes on his clipboard. Mrs. Clarke, he said finally, we'll run through a series of tests, nothing invasive. I just need to see how you think, reason, and recall. This evaluation will speak louder than any accusation. Forced a small smile and told him to begin. For nearly 2 hours he tested me. Sequences of words, simple problems, details from a short story, questions about my routines and finances, even things about Harold. I answered clearly, my mind sharp because I knew what was at stake. When he set down his pen and looked at me, it felt like a verdict. Mrs. Clarke, your results aren't just good, they're excellent. You scored above average for your age in memory, comprehension, and reasoning. There is no sign of diminished capacity. Relief loosened something in my chest I hadn't felt in weeks. I'll prepare a full report, he added. Mr. Weber will have it by tomorrow. When I returned home that evening, Donovan was waiting. He took the report as if it were a weapon he'd been desperate to use. This is our shield, he said. Tomorrow, we gather the swords. The witnesses arrived next. Members of the garden club signed affidavits describing me as clear-headed, organized, and active, Eleanor standing by my side, steady and unflinching. Vivian has more energy and clarity than women 10 years her junior, she said plainly. If anyone doubts her, let them spend an afternoon at the club. Then the surprise I hadn't dared hope for. Mr. Green, the pharmacist, came to my door flushed and remorseful, clutching a folded letter. I need to set the record straight, he said. He explained that Monica had pressured him into a statement suggesting confusion over medications. In truth, I'd only asked him to double-check a dosage after a brand change. He signed a retraction. I took the letter with trembling hands and thanked him until my voice broke. Donovan read it and nodded. Another pillar from their case had fallen away. Weber opened his briefcase one last time and slid a crisp document across the table. The no-claim agreement I had drafted after their first demand. My breath caught. This is the exact agreement you mentioned, he said. You wrote it weeks ago, didn't you? I nodded. You drafted it after their first demand. You never thought you'd need it, but it's real. He smiled. This proves you weren't confused or senile. You were setting terms. This paper shows foresight, planning, and strength. It ties directly to the words you said to Monica. Didn't I mention the condition? The phrase rang in my head as clearly as the day I'd spoken it. For the first time since it began, the ground felt solid. I had allies, evidence, and a plan. I paced the rose garden that evening with the cameras blinking softly from the eaves, and whispered, I'm ready, Harold. I'm ready to face them. With a lawyer, a doctor's report, community testimony, and the no-claim agreement, I felt armored against their lies. Court day came under a cold, gray sky. I dressed in the navy suit Harold had always liked, simple, dignified, and tightened my grip on the cane. As I climbed the courthouse steps, my knees ached, climbing those courthouse steps, but my spine was unbending. This wasn't just another date, was the day they tried to erase me. The courtroom was fuller than I ever imagined. Neighbors, acquaintances, even women from the garden club had come, their whispers filling the air until the bailiff called for silence. I sat at the defense table beside Donovan, my pulse hammering in my ears. Across from me sat Daniel and Emma, with their polished lawyer, Mr. Martin. Emma's lips curved into that familiar smirk, while Daniel couldn't bring himself to meet my eyes. Judge Alvarez entered, his presence heavy with authority. This court is now in session. Petitioners, proceed. Martin stood, smooth as an actor, delivering rehearsed lines. Your Honor, today we present the case of Mrs. Margaret Hale, a 71-year-old widow, who can no longer manage her financial or personal affairs. My client's her devoted son and daughter, in Louis only to ensure her safety and the responsible handling of her estate. The words cut like glass. Devoted. If poison could take the form of a word, it would sound like that. But Martin gestured toward me as if I were a frail artifact. She has displayed concerning behaviors, mismanaging funds, showing confusion over simple matters. This is not about greed, but about love. Guardianship will protect her from herself. He called his first witness, Mr. Davis, my neighbor. The man shuffled forward, eyes downcast. I've seen Mrs. Hale shouting in her driveway, looking paranoid. Strangers come late at night. She's not the same woman she used to be. I believe she's being manipulated. Heat rose in my chest. Those strangers, they were security technicians installing cameras. They were friends bringing food. Eleanor arriving with her basket of lemons. Next. Martin read aloud the pharmacist's old statement, presenting it like scripture. Mrs. Hale showed confusion with her prescriptions. She could not manage them responsibly. My stomach turned. I knew Mr. Green had retracted it, but here it was again, paraded before the judge like a weapon. Finally, they presented Dr. Lehman, tall, polished, with glasses catching the fluorescent light. He spoke like a man used to being believed. Based on the records and statements provided, Mrs. Hale demonstrates early signs of diminished capacity. Her judgment is impaired, her memory questionable. Guardianship would ensure stability. Emma dabbed her eyes with a tissue, the picture of false concern. Daniel leaned into the microphone, his voice low and pained. My mother forgets things. She loses track of money. She doesn't know what's best for herself anymore. We just want to help her. That was the blow that nearly broke me. To hear my son, my boy whom I once rocked to sleep, declare me unfit. It was like being buried alive. The weight of 100 stairs pressed down on me, waiting for me to fracture. For a heartbeat, I wanted to let go, to surrender, and end this cruel war. But then my eyes found Eleanor in the gallery. She sat tall, chin lifted, her gaze steady, burning with belief. Behind her, the garden club women nodded in solidarity. And beside me, Donovan leaned close, his voice low but firm. Hold steady. Their performance is almost over. Then, we take the floor. Judge Alvarez raised his hand. The court has heard the petitioner's witnesses. We will now proceed to cross-examination. Martin returned to his seat. Emma clung to his arm like victory was already hers. Daniel's eyes flicked toward me, then a Washam flickering across his face. I steadied my breath as Donovan rose. He buttoned his jacket with deliberate calm and walked to the center of the room, his presence sharp as a blade. Your Honor, he began, his voice quiet but edged with steel. What we have just heard is not evidence of incapacity. It is evidence of exploitation. The petitioners have spun a story stitched together with gossip, exaggeration, and the words of hired mouths. Stories, however, can be tested, and that is exactly what we will do. My pulse quickened. not just with fear now, but with fire. They had painted me weak, broken, confused. Now it was our turn. Donovan turned first to Davis. Mr. Davis, you said you witnessed arguments. Were those arguments about confusion or money? Davis shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. Well, money, mostly. So, not confusion at all. Disagreements about her refusing to bankroll her son anymore. Correct. Davis swallowed. Yes, I suppose. Donovan leaned in, voice slicing through the silence. And these strangers you mentioned, would you like to know who they were? Members of her garden club delivering food, a licensed security company installing cameras, friends, not manipulators. You mistook kindness for chaos, didn't you? A flush crept across Davis's face. Maybe I did. Thank you. No further questions. He turned next to Mr. Green, though Martin tried to keep him from the stand. Donovan's insistence brought him forward. Mr. Green, Donovan said evenly, you once signed a statement claiming Mrs. Hale was confused about her medication. Would you tell the court why you retracted that statement? Mr. Green's face reddened, but his voice came steady. Because it wasn't true. Mrs. Hale wasn't confused. She double-checked a dosage after a brand switch. That was responsibility, not incompetence. Emma pressured me into signing the earlier statement. I regret it, and I want the record corrected. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Emma's smirk collapsed, her jaw clenched tight. Donovan turned to the judge. So the pharmacist himself admits the claim was false. That leaves us with Dr. Lehman. The psychiatrist adjusted his glasses, his polished mask unshaken for now. Asterisk, my knees ached, but my back remained straight. This wasn't just another hearing, it was the day they tried to strip me of my life. The courtroom was more crowded than I imagined. Neighbors, acquaintances, even members of the gardening circle had shown up. Murmurs filled the air until the bailiff called for silence. I took my seat at the defense table beside Mr. Whitman, my lawyer, my pulse hammering in my ears. Across from me sat Daniel and his wife, Cassandra, flanked by their attorney, Mr. Caro. Cassandra wore her usual smug smirk, while Daniel couldn't even meet my eyes. Then the judge entered, Judge Ramirez, his presence commanding as he adjusted his robe. This court is now in session. Petitioners, proceed. Caro rose, his voice smooth and theatrical. Your Honor, today we present the case of Mrs. Eleanor Hartley, a 71-year-old widow who sadly can no longer manage her financial or personal affairs. My clients, her devoted son and daughter-in-law, only wish to ensure her safety and the proper handling of her estate. The phrase devoted son burned like poison in my throat. Caro gestured toward me. She is widowed, isolated, and has displayed concerning behaviors, mismanaging funds, showing confusion over simple matters. This is not greed, but love. Guardianship will protect her from herself. Then came the parade of witnesses. Mr. Davis, my neighbor, shuffled nervously to the stand. I've seen Mrs. Hartley yelling in her driveway, looking paranoid. Strangers visiting late at night. She's not the same woman she once was. My chest tightened. Those strangers were my security team. The visitors he saw were women from the gardening club, bringing flowers or fruit from their orchards. Caro pressed on, reading aloud an old statement from Mr. Green. The pharmacist, Mrs. Hartley, displayed confusion about her prescriptions. She cannot manage them responsibly. My stomach churned. That man had already admitted the statement wasn't true, but Caro still dragged it into the light to stain my name. Finally, they called Dr. Lehman, a polished psychiatrist with silver glasses glinting under the courtroom lights. He spoke with clinical authority. Based on the reports provided, Mrs. Hartley demonstrates early signs of diminished capacity. Guardianship would provide stability. Cassandra dabbed her eyes with the tissue, the picture of a grieving daughter. Then, Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. My mother forgets things. She misplaces money. She doesn't know what's best for herself anymore. We just want to help her. His words pierced deeper than any lawyer's argument. To hear the boy I once rocked to sleep testify that I wasn't capable of living my own life, it felt like being buried alive. For a heartbeat, I almost faltered. I almost wanted to give up, but then my gaze landed on Eleanor Parker, my dearest friend, seated proudly in the gallery. Her chin was high, her eyes blazing with belief in me. Behind her, the women from my gardening circle nodded in silent solidarity. And beside me, Mr. Whitman leaned closer, whispering, "Hold steady. Their stage is almost over." Then it's our turn. When Judge Ramirez finally gestured for the defense, Cassandra clutched her lawyer's arm as if victory were already hers. Daniel's eyes flicked to mine for the briefest moment before dropping again in shame. Mr. Whitman rose, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. His voice carried steel beneath its composure. Your Honor, what the petitioners have presented is not proof of incapacity. It is proof of exploitation. One by one, he dismantled their case. He forced Mr. Davis to admit the arguments he overheard were about money, not confusion. He revealed that the strangers were licensed professionals and friends, not manipulators. He called Mr. Green to the stand, who confessed Cassandra pressured him to sign a false statement, and when Dr. Lehman tried to hold his ground, Whitman's questions cut like blades. You've never examined Mrs. Hartley, have you? Never spoken with her, never administered a single test. Yet you stand here claiming authority over her mind. The gallery rippled with gasps. Then came the evidence that broke their facade completely. Dr. Moore's full psychological evaluation, proving my memory, reasoning, and judgment were above average, followed by the legal agreement I had drafted myself requiring Daniel and Cassandra to pay rent and sign away any claim if they ever wished to live in my villa. A clear, calculated act of foresight, not confusion. At last, Whitman turned to me. Mrs. Hartley, would you like to speak? My legs trembled as I rose with my cane, but my voice was steady. I looked at the judge, then the crowd, and finally at my son. For years, I thought love meant giving. I gave 36 months of rent, groceries, repairs, gifts, in total, $77,000, but I wasn't a mother to them. I was their bottomless vending machine. And when I finally said no, they dragged me here to declare me incompetent. But I am not broken. I am not weak. I am free. Silence fell so heavy it rang in my ears. Then Judge Ramirez leaned forward. The petition is denied. Mrs. Hartley remains fully capable of managing her affairs. His gavel struck like thunder. Relief surged through me. Cassandra's face twisted with fury, her mask shattered. Daniel's shoulders sank, shame etching itself into every line of his face, but I didn't linger on them. My eyes found Eleanor and the women who believed in me, Mr. Whitman at my side, Dr. Moore's report in the record. I lifted my chin and whispered, the machine is broken, and I am free. The gallery erupted into quiet applause. The very next day, I signed the papers. The villa, my so-called golden cage, sold for $5 million. Everyone was shocked I let it go. But the moment I handed over the keys, I felt lighter. They had wanted those keys so desperately, and now they meant nothing. I moved into a seaside condominium, smaller but full of peace. No shadows of entitlement, no footsteps but mine, just me and the freedom I had fought for, with the money. I gave $1 million to an organization fighting elder financial abuse. The rest I divided carefully, enough to live, enough to travel, enough to finally breathe without fear. For the first time in years, I was not someone's wallet, I was me. Asterisk for once. My accounts were mine, not a ledger for someone else's debts. Diana, my sister, came by soon after I moved into the condo, bearing flowers and that familiar no-nonsense smile that always cut through my doubt. It suits you, she said, pausing on the balcony where the ocean shimmered below. I hugged her so hard I could feel the years fall away. It feels like starting over, I told her. She pulled back, looked me in the eye and said, you didn't just start over, Vivian. You won. You proved you're more than their machine. You proved you're free. Her words warmed a part of me I'd thought long gone. Family didn't have to be blood. It could be truth, loyalty, the people who stand beside you instead of draining you dry. Diana had always been that person. Eleanor and the garden club had become it, too. Not long after, Eleanor hatched a plan. We'll go away, she said with a mischievous grin. We'll drink wine, walk through gardens, and remind ourselves life isn't over because others tried to bury us early. So we left in Florence. I stood beneath cathedrals whose cracks only made them more beautiful. In Rome, I tossed a coin into the Trevi fountain and wished not for money, but for stubbornness and resilience. In Venice, I sat by a canal and laughed with Eleanor until my sides ached. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living to meet someone else's needs. I was living for my own. One evening, back in the condo, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, Harold's photo in my lap. The sun slid into the sea, painting the world gold. I smiled through the salt on my cheeks and whispered, we did it. They wanted to erase me, but I stood. I'm not their vending machine anymore. I'm free. The wind carried the words out over the water, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to justify my choices. If you had been me, would you have handed them the keys? The ocean kept its patient answer, and I knew now that freedom has no price.